I'm about to explain to you how practices with ourselves, like meditation, being more conscious, being more aware, and creating more space within ourselves and watching our subconscious mind, how changes within ourselves can lead to revolution and bigger changes down the line in society. So, the more that we sit in silence and we allow ourselves to slow down and become more aware of ourselves and our minds and the thoughts that are constantly running through them day in and day out, what happens is the more and more we slow down, the more and more we meditate, the more we go into that slow observer mode, we start to catch thoughts, we start to catch stories, we start to catch assumptions, we start to catch things that we think that oftentimes are not even true, or things that maybe we just accepted as full truths that aren't full truths and we never really challenged them before. And so by slowing down and meditating and becoming more aware, what we do is we catch some of these thoughts, we catch some of these assumptions, we catch some of these subconscious beliefs. And then what happens is once we catch them, we can start to challenge them. And when we challenge them, we can start to maybe remove them. And once we remove them, we can create more space within ourselves. And space is always necessary for any change. Because think about if you're trying to change yourself and you have the same thoughts and you have the same beliefs and you are filled with all of this stuff, then there is no room, there is no real space for you to implement anything new, right? Like, think of a cup being filled. If a cup is filled or a bowl is filled with food or soup and you go to put more soup in it, it's just going to overfill. It's not going to hold in the container. The same thing is true for us in our bodies and our minds and our spirits, that if we have all these thoughts, we have all these beliefs about society or others or ourselves or what we can do or can't do or what's possible, what's not possible, how things are, and we just accept them for how they are. If we do not create that space, then we're not allowing for as much opportunity for new things to come in, new possibilities to come in, new ideas, new ways of living, new ways of thinking. And so the more that we sit with ourselves and we create that awareness and that space and we start to create more emptiness within us, we start to empty ourselves out. We start to remove some of these things that maybe society put in our heads or parents put in our heads or other people put in our heads, that once we actually sit and get the thought to slow down and we sit in front of it and observe it, we realize that there's not really validity to it, that it's not an accepted truth, that it doesn't mean that it's universally true. The way that our society operates, or capitalism, or the way that family structures are or aren't, or how people should live, or what the definition of a real job is, or any of these types of assumptions, or what success is. There's all these stories that are going on in each of our individual heads. And so what happens is when we slow down, we create that space, we allow that opportunity for us to think differently about ourselves on a very personal level, but then that can start to expand over time. That the more and more we look at ourselves and challenge this thought or challenge this belief, the more we can start expanding out and going, well, what are those thoughts or beliefs on the community level, on the city level, on a state level, on a country level, on a worldwide level, right? You start to expand that questioning and expand that awareness and create that space to where you can actually start considering different possibilities, not only for yourself, but for our communities, for our states, for our countries, for the world, for everyone. And for me personally, other people could have different opinions, but for me, how I see real, significant, sustainable change occurring, change that would last for a long, long time, hopefully forever, and continue into perpetuity, I see that change happening on the individual level. I truly do believe it begins with every single one of us inside, in our minds, in our hearts, in our souls, sitting, becoming more aware, creating that space, realizing our patterns, realizing our assumptions, realizing things that have been put in our head that maybe aren't ours or maybe aren't universal truths. And then we expand that out to start questioning community, and we start to question, how things should be structured around us. How do we take care of one another? Are these really the things that we value? Are these things that we're currently valuing really of value? Or are there other things that are maybe more valuable? Are there other ways we could maybe structure things? Does it have to be in this way? Are these assumptions that we've made about people or about things, how much of that is ours versus how much of that is indoctrination from a young age, from media, from our society, from companies, from advertising, even our own friends or family, or just people that we've met, social media now. So if we are going to wish for bigger changes and desire bigger changes, I truly do believe it begins with each of us individually looking at ourselves, stopping, observing more. And as we do that, we can stop and observe and create more space in our society in general. And that's where people can really start to slow down, start to come together, and start to look at each other and go, hey, like, I've thought of this, and like, yeah, this isn't true. Yeah, I don't think this is true either. And like, we can break out of these patterns and break out of these being too filled as individuals and being too filled as a society. Like I said, there's not going to be space for us to really have rhetoric. There's not going to be enough space for us to really slow down and stop and start questioning and start looking around and talking to each other. I mean, like, yeah, like what could we do? What could be different? Okay, we could get rid of this stuff. We can get rid of this stuff. We don't need this. We don't need that. This could change. Okay, so what would we change it to? Then we can really start getting to talks of change, start getting to talks of really a revolution, not a short, temporary, violent revolution where I think that things would just, I think there's fallout and there's problems with that on the back end of that. But a more sustainable change where people just slowly and gradually and peacefully change over time to where, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years down the line, it isn't a violent thing and then something, we go back into old patterns right back again because we didn't really learn any lessons. We didn't really incorporate anything deeply or internally or within our society. It's more of changing ourselves and changing the way we think, changing the way we raise our kids, changing the way we view society, changing the way we interact with one another, care for one another, and just change the way that we operate on an individual level and how accountable we are and aware we are of ourselves and our own flaws and our own difficulties and our own assumptions. And so, yeah, I think that's how bigger changes are going to occur. I think it starts on the individual level. Other people can disagree and they can focus on, other ways of, their thoughts of changing society or shifting society. But I think that even if that wouldn't change society on a larger level, think of the change it would just in your life, my life, just in individual people's lives, to be more aware of the stories that we're telling that aren't true, to reduce suffering in ourselves, to help reduce suffering in others, to help observe our minds and understand ourselves better, to see how our subconscious mind works, to understand our psychology better so that we can better serve ourselves and serve others and serve the community and serve the world. So to me, I feel like it's just a very worthwhile endeavor, and I truly do believe that these larger changes, if we desire them, they start with us, and we have to begin with ourselves. If we can't change ourselves, how do we expect to change our community or change our structures or change anything larger if we can't even change an individual person, the one thing we have full control over, or at least more control over, which is ourselves? So that's what I believe. That's how I see a larger change or a larger revolution kind of occurring slowly and building over time to where humanity really shifts and all of society really shifts. And I think that energy is already occurring. Honestly, I think it's been a part of humanity. I think it's growing now more than ever. I think we need it now more than ever. And so, yeah, I think it comes down to, again, in our day-to-day, taking more time, taking more space, reducing distractions, reducing outside noise, sitting with ourselves, observing ourselves, slowing down, becoming more aware of these thoughts that are circling around in our heads, all these assumptions, all these stories, because that's going to allow us to flourish and benefit, because it's allowing us to get out of our own way in a lot of ways, because a lot of those stories and assumptions hold us back, or they don't allow us to be fully who we are, or we don't allow us to be as happy as we could be or at peace, or pursuing our passions, or just restricting us in so many different ways. So, yep, that's what I think the answer is, in my opinion. And I just think there's a lot of benefits, even if it doesn't result in something larger. So anyway, take some time, take some space for yourself, sit, reflect, observe, and challenge those stories and challenge those subconscious beliefs. You deserve it. Our communities deserve it. The world deserves it.